Hello and welcome back to Arena Books Book Talk. This is the reader's entry into great narratives. I'm Josh, and I'm joined by John. We're talking The Wastelands, the third book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. This book has a lot to offer, and we're going to offer our spoiler cast in about 5 minutes on what we like the best parts of this book. It's mid-series. In any book that you actually commit invest in, you get to the good stuff about midway through, or you should, if the story is going places. This story gave us a lot that we did not expect. And it was truly, I think, original entry that showed this dark fantasy epic deserves a place in the greats of American fantasy. And it's a dark, dark story, and it's not horror, and it gives us characters that are as original as Stephen King's other characters. And I give it 5 stars up front. I thought I loved the second one, but I fell in love with this one. Some of the best writing thus far in the series.
Josh, this book is absolutely what got me on board with the Dark Tower series. I really liked the first book. The second book, I thought was okay. I enjoyed some pieces of it. This one got me locked in. And I certainly have an opinion on this book. And the first one is that Stephen King hates the gunslinger because he continues to make this guy lose pieces of himself. In fact, when we start the book off, the gunslinger, Roland, is losing his mind.
Him and his friend that he killed, I think he's being haunted. He let one of the other group members die in his like everlasting quest to get the Dark Tower. It's like the everlasting gobstopper. It's just, he can't quite reach it. It lasts forever and ever. He keeps wandering this scorched earth. So yeah, I think he does hate Roland. And I think he's getting revenge on Roland for making some bad decisions.
Yeah, so a plot point that came up right at the beginning, well, maybe it was a little way into the book, that blew my mind. And there's nothing really that profound about it. This is a staple of sci-fi or fantasy, if you will. And that is that the reason Roland and Jake were losing their minds is because in the second book, Roland changes what happened in the first book. He kind of went back in time and saved Jake from being killed. Therefore, Jake technically never should have shown up in the first book. He altered the timeline. And I started the third book wondering, why are these guys losing their mind? You know, is it because they're separated? Is it because something else has happened? And then when it finally occurred to me what was going on, when Stephen King had to spell it out for me, basically, it blew my mind. It was right under my nose. And I was giving some serious kudos to Stephen King for throwing that in.
Yeah, you're right. Stephen King doesn't make it a time-traveling story or an alternate reality story. He makes it a narrative of choices that they made. And you're right. He had to spell it out to me as well. I was like, oh, that's why they're losing their minds. So it's pretty awesome. The characters, the ensemble cast, it's, you know, we joke about King hating his protagonist, but it's about a flawed character. He is a hero. He's a person that has convictions. He's trying to maybe reach his salvation. We don't know what the Dark Tower is. I mean, you got to invest yourself in the series to figure all that out. But I love the characters. I love this particular story. Because when we get to it's really 2 different stories. Roland losing his mind, but he gets a little bit of salvation when Jake comes from the other world, joins their crew. And then it's like a totally different book in the latter half when we see them going through the city of Lud. And we talk about how each group member has a talent, has a skill that will allow them to survive. It's a true fellowship. And they all have their skills. And Jake, you know, we foreshadow about they have to get across the wastelands. It's a small irony that we don't see much of the wastelands. It's more of a, you know, trying to get to them rather than go through them in this book. But Jake, you know, gives us this idea that there's this evil, malevolent train, and it sounds goofy, but Stephen King pulls it off in grand fashion, like you said. It's just his ability to coalesce all these different pieces, and Jake telling them that they have to reach this deadly train, and that's their goal. But then getting there is a great ride, no pun intended. It's them meeting these decrepit, decaying, not mutants, but diseased people in Lud, very dangerous people. And my favorite part of the book, which I'll talk about, but that's why the book was sold for me, because it puts them in real peril, and it's fabulous how he gets them out.
Yeah, to your point about some of the random things Stephen King threw in this book, we're talking about a book called Charlie the Choo Choo Train, Purple Blades of Grass, a Rose, Blaine the Train, you know, and there's still the concept of a cowboy being in a fantasy-ish story. And Stephen King's able to pull all these things together into a timeline and plot points that are coming full circle. It really is masterful writing, and I'm assuming that the things he pulls into the story probably mean something to him in some way, because it has a lot of authenticity to it, which is something we said in our full blown podcast where we talk about the book in detail. But I would also like to mention that King masterfully leads us into the importance of riddles. Riddles become a huge part at the end of this book when they're dealing with Blaine, the demonic train, and it is not something that he just threw into the third book to move the story along. He started in book 1 talking about how important riddles were, and it built up all the way into book 3. And I'd like to point that out as masterful writing. He knew what he was doing. He didn't just use a convenient plot point.
I absolutely love this book because I don't know if Jake will survive. You know, we've lost him once, and the thing that sold me was the cutaway scenes of going from Susanna and Eddie trying to get to Blaine the train, and they're absolute horror that this is a malevolent, evil entity that they probably can't match wits against. How could they? This thing survived for eons. So, and then we cut away from their introduction with him back to Roland, who's tracking Jake, who was kidnapped by one of them, you know, by Gasher, who's this guy who has nothing to lose. And it's a great cat and mouse game. And then we come up with, you know, your huge dystopian, you know, larger than life character that's in charge of these crazies in the city. And I know he wasn't your favorite character. I had the opposite reaction, but the point is they're behind, you know, fortified steel. How does Roland, a normal man, you know, get to Jake before he's killed? So there's I think a lot of things King does to quickly change these characters, to show what these characters are capable of. Like talk about, you know, King talks about Jake maybe losing his innocence because he's going to basically be, you know, molested by these vagabonds. But then a whole different coming of age story comes when he actually defends himself, grabs a gun, and a great scene is able to, you know, shoot the TikTok man, which is this larger than life dystopian leader. So King plays out the narrative in completely unexpected ways, and you have to read the book. But I think people are going to die. Different people die. I think Roland's going to save the day. Something else happens. So that's why the book's my favorite, because of the scene where Roland is tracking Jake and saves Jake in an unexpected way.
I thought it was outstanding that Stephen King was able to pull off a city of people who genuinely were not afraid of dying. That was a difficult situation he brought the party into. And I did like how Jake got to the root of what their weakness really was, which I think is what gave their no fear of dying authenticity. Again, that word. Their real fear was embarrassment. And when Jake figured that out, he manipulated it to his advantage. And I don't care what you say, Josh, the TikTok man was definitely one of Arnold's workout buddies. I just kept thinking of one of those barbarians from Conan the Barbarian, basically, the Arnold movie. Yeah, I do think the book was fantastic overall. And when we finally did get to the Wastelands, that also huge shock. I thought it was going to be desert or something like that. No, this was something far worse.
Yeah, the ending was exceptional, even though it was a cliffhanger. It was a distorted, tortured land that they were going over. They depend on Blaine the train to transport them across this tortured, scorched earth, like in Judge Dredd. That's where I'm stealing that phrase from. But basically, the showdown, Blaine is crazy. Blaine is greedy. He wants his riddles, or he's going to kill them. And it's really interesting how Roland, he's like, no, we're not going to do it your way. We're going to do it our way. And he basically he insults Blaine, and Blaine could easily just derail them and kill them. So it's like a showdown with words, and it's a pretty what you call it, a smack talk. And Roland, it's a great gambit on his part, since Blaine is able to call bluffs. You know, he's a computer that can stress test your voice levels, and it's really great how King all did bring that together and made it believable, and how Roland had the battle, it was called the battle madness or the battle rage descend on him, and instead of bullets, he used his intellect, and he said, yeah, we'll do riddles. If we stump you, we survive, but you can kill us if you can guess all our riddles. So I really love the cliffhanger, and we'll see if it turns out in an unexpected way, because Stephen King keeps on producing unexpected, crazy twists.
Yeah, great book. Got to read it.
Got to read it. We're going to the Dark Tower. We're headed there. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.